The street world in The Wire is not random. It looks chaotic from the outside because everything happens fast, people die over corners, young boys take orders without understanding why, and money moves from hand to hand so quickly that it feels impossible to trace. But underneath all of that, the street has a structure. It has levels. It has a chain of power that begins with kids standing outside in the cold and ends with men who never have to touch a vial, hold a gun, or say their real name out loud. The higher you climb in The Wire, the less visible power becomes. At the bottom, power is loud. It stands on corners, shouts warnings, fights over territory, and bleeds in public. At the top, power is quiet. It moves through phones, ports, lawyers, restaurants, shipments, and favors. The street thinks power belongs to whoever controls the corner, but the show slowly reveals something colder than that. The corner is only the surface. The real power belongs to the people who decide what reaches the corner in the first place. The first level of street power is the lookout, the runner, and the corner kid. This is the lowest form of power because it barely feels like power at all. These are the boys who stand outside and watch for police, move small packages, hold stash, and repeat instructions given by someone older. They might feel important because they are part of the game, but their importance is fragile. They are replaceable almost immediately. If one kid is arrested, another kid takes his place. If one kid gets scared, another kid is hungry enough to step in. This level is where the street recruits its future. Boys like Wallace, Poot, and Ung corner workers are not powerful in any real way, but they are necessary. They keep the machine alive by doing the visible work. They are the ones taking the risk in broad daylight. They are the ones who meet the customers, handle the signals, and absorb the first wave of police attention. To the people above them, they are useful because they are young, cheap, and easy to replace. The tragedy is that many of them think the game is letting them in, when really the game is using them up. The second level is the corner soldier. This is the first point where someone begins to have a little control. A soldier is not just standing around anymore. He knows the rhythm of the corner. He understands when to move, when to shut up, when to press someone, and when to wait. Bodhi is one of the clearest examples of this level. He is not a boss, but he is not just a child either. He believes in the rules of the corner. He believes in discipline. He believes that if he does his job well enough, he can survive and maybe rise. This level is dangerous because it gives a person just enough pride to stay trapped. A soldier can command younger boys. He can protect a package, he can hold a corner, he can become known by police and respected by people around him. But he still does not own anything. He does not control the supply, he does not decide the larger strategy, he does not choose when wars start or end. He is powerful only inside the small space he has been given. Bodhi can hold his ground with real courage, but his courage does not change the fact that someone else decides the future of the game. The third level is muscle. These are the people who turn orders into fear. Weebay, Stinkum, Savino, Bird, Chris, Snoop, and others represent different versions of this power. They are not just selling drugs or watching corners. They enforce the organization's will. They punish mistakes. They make sure people understand that rules are not suggestions. On the street, this level looks like real power because violence always looks powerful up close. Muscle gives an organization its reputation. Avon's name means something partly because people know he has men behind him who will act. Marlowe's name spreads because Chris and Snoop make his threats feel unavoidable. Without muscle, a boss is just a man giving instructions. Muscle makes those instructions real. It gives shape to fear. It makes people think twice before stealing, snitching, disrespecting, or refusing an order. But muscle is still not the highest power. It is dangerous, but it is also exposed. The men who carry out violence are easier to identify, easier to chase, and easier to sacrifice. They leave bodies behind. They create witnesses. They attract police pressure, they can be feared by everyone on the block and still be disposable to the people above them. The Wire never lets violence become a fantasy of control. Violence can win corners, silence enemies, and build reputations, but it also burns everything around it. It solves one problem while creating three more. The fourth level is the lieutenant or crew chief. This is where street power becomes management. A lieutenant does not just fight or sell, he organizes. He answers to the boss, passes orders down, watches the money, handles disputes, and keeps the lower levels moving. D'Angelo runs the pit for Avon. Stringer manages parts of the Barksdale operation. Slim Charles becomes trusted because he understands both discipline and street reality. Cheese, in a weaker and messier way, also exists in this middle zone. This level is important because it connects the boss to the street. A kingpin cannot personally watch every corner, count every package, or correct every mistake. He needs people who can translate his authority into daily action. Lieutenant is the person who makes the organization feel present even when the boss is not there. He is close enough to the top to understand strategy, but close enough to the street to know what is actually happening. The problem with this level is pressure from both sides. The people above expect results. The people below expect protection, direction, and sometimes mercy. D'Angelo feels this pressure heavily because he is born into power but forced to manage people who are living the consequences of that power. Stringer tries to turn this level into something more professional, but the street does not fully obey business logic. Slim survives longer because he understands the game without lying to himself about what it is. At this level, power depends on judgment. One bad read can start a war, lose money, or expose everyone. The fifth level is the local kingpin. This is Avon, Stringer at his peak, Marlowe, Prop Joe, and the major bosses who control territory, crews, and street reputation. This is the level most people inside the neighborhood think of as the top. These are the names people whisper. These are the men who decide who works, who eats, who gets protected, and who gets removed. They do not just control corners, they control the meaning of corners. Avon's power comes from territory and loyalty. He sees the street almost like a kingdom. Corners are not just places to sell drugs, they are proof of strength. If someone takes them, it is not only a financial loss, it is an insult. His power is old school because it depends on fear, reputation, and visible control. People follow Avon because they know what his name means. Stringer tries to change that kind of power. He wants the money without the constant street damage. He wants meetings, fronts, property, political access, and a cleaner version of control. But Stringer's weakness is that he believes he can step halfway out of the street while still using the street whenever it serves him. He understands business better than most, but he underestimates how deeply the violence is tied to the money. Marlowe is different again. He wants power in its purest street form. He does not just want money. He wants his name to mean obedience. He wants people to fear him even when he is not present. With Marlowe, the street becomes colder. Avon still has a code shaped by older ideas of respect and loyalty. Marlowe has no real interest in that older world unless it helps him dominate. He strips the game down to control, silence, and reputation. Prop Joe represents another version of Kingpin power. He is less emotional than Avon and less obsessed with personal fear than Marlowe. He survives through negotiation, supply, and calm calculation. Joe understands that the man who controls access to good product can control men who think they are stronger than him. But his downfall shows the danger of being powerful without being feared enough by the wrong person. Joe understands the business, but Marlowe understands that the street will always have men who prefer taking over to making deals. The sixth level is the supplier and connector. This is where the street starts reaching beyond the neighborhood. Men like Sergey, Vandas, and the supply-side network behind Prop Joe operate in a world that is still connected to the street, but not trapped inside it. This level does not need to own a corner. It owns access, it controls the quality, the pipeline, the shipment, and the connection to something larger than Baltimore. This level is more powerful than the local kingpin because every street boss depends on product. Avon can have soldiers, Marlowe can have fear, Joe can have diplomacy, but without supply, the corners go dry. The whole street economy depends on something arriving before it can be sold. The people at this level understand that. They do not need to argue over every block because the blocks come to them eventually. The supplier level also shows how small the street can be. To the boys on the corner, a local boss can look like a giant. To the supplier, that same boss is a customer, a risk, or a temporary partner. This is one of the cruelest truths in The Wire. The people spilling blood over territory are often fighting over the final step in a chain they do not control. They are killing for retail space while someone else controls wholesale. That brings us to the seventh and highest level, the Greek. The Greek sits at the top because he is almost beyond the street while still feeding it. He is not a street boss in the normal sense. He does not need a crew on a corner. He does not need his name painted across a neighborhood. He does not need young boys proving themselves for him in public. His power is deeper because it comes from distance. He exists above the daily noise of the game. He controls supply, shipping, contacts, corruption, information, and escape routes. By the time his product reaches the street, it has already passed through a world that most dealers will never understand. The Greek's power is almost invisible, and that is what makes it so strong. Avon is powerful, but the police can build a case around his organization. Marlowe is terrifying, but his violence creates bodies and patterns. Prop Joe is careful, but he still lives close enough to the street to be reached. The Greek is different. He floats above the world he profits from. He can change locations, identities, methods, and partners. He does not need to be loved or respected by the corner. He only needs the chain to keep moving. What makes the Greek the highest level is that he understands power as survival through distance. The street bosses are tied to their names. Avon needs the Barksdale name to mean something. Marlowe needs his name to travel. Joe needs people to trust him. But the Greek does not even need his identity to be stable. He can hide behind false nationality, false fronts, and quiet arrangements. His lack of a fixed image becomes part of his protection. He also represents the truth that the street is connected to the wider world. The boys on the corner may think they are living in a closed universe, but their world is tied to ports, shipping containers, international crime, law enforcement leaks, political weakness, and global supply. The drugs do not magically appear in West Baltimore. They arrive through systems. The Greek understands those systems better than anyone below him. This is why the 7 levels of power in The Wire are so brutal. Each level thinks the next step up will bring control. The corner kid wants to be a soldier. The soldier wants respect. The muscle wants fear. The lieutenant wants authority. The kingpin wants territory. The supplier wants access. But at the very top, the Greek shows that the highest power is not about being seen. It is about being unreachable. The street rewards visibility at the lower levels. A young man wants people to know he is dangerous. A soldier wants people to know he is loyal. A boss wants people to know his name carries weight. But the higher the power gets, the more visibility becomes a weakness. The Greek wins because he does not need the street to recognize him. He only needs the street to depend on what he provides. That is the final shape of power in The Wire. The corner is where the game is most visible, but it is also where power is weakest. The boys outside carry the risk, the soldiers carry the pride, the muscle carries the violence, the lieutenants carry the pressure, the kingpins carry the reputation, the suppliers carry the access, and the Greek carries the whole chain from a distance. By the time the product reaches the hand of a kid on the corner, the most powerful man in the system is already far away from the danger. He does not hear the arguments. He does not stand through raids. He does not explain himself to mothers, police, or crews. He lets everyone below him fight over pieces of a world he can abandon whenever he needs to. That is why the Greek is the 7th level. He is not the loudest man in the game. He is not the most feared on the block. He is not the person whose name gets repeated by hoppers and soldiers. He is higher than that. He is the man behind the supply, behind the connection, behind the quiet machinery that makes the street possible. And in The Wire, that is the darkest kind of power. Not the power to own a corner, not the power to scare a neighborhood, not even the power to run a city's drug trade for a while. The highest power is being able to profit from the street without ever having to belong to it.